All right, live on March 24th, 2021. Welcome to Black Belt Zen. I am David. Thank you for tuning in. A lot to talk about today. Not really sure. I guess we'll start here. A little bit of UFC news. Miesha Tate is reportedly returning to the UFC. She's going to have a fight on July 17th. That is not officially confirmed as of the last that I saw about it, which was maybe 45 minutes ago. But that's a pretty good story if she's coming back to the UFC. I did see for the first time I actually watched an entire episode of The Ultimate Fighter probably 2 or 3 months ago. They're available on UFC Fight Pass, and I watched Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey the whole season, and it's actually pretty good. It's from I think 2013 or 2014, so it's old, but it's still pretty good if you're into UFC. And I'm not a big UFC fan, but I'll check it out every once in a while. You might want to check that out on UFC Fight Pass, or I think Amazon has it. There's some other place you can get it. But The Ultimate Fighter, of course, one of the reality shows that I don't even know if it's still going on or what, but that was one that I did watch. Thanks to those of you who are tuning in. Looks like we got a couple people watching here during the live stream. Feel free to join us in the live chat. Say something if you want. If you do like this video, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. And when you hit the subscribe button, make sure that that little bell is on because that way it'll show up in your feed. Hi, Jessica. Thanks for tuning in. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the shooting in Colorado the other day. We kind of didn't have a lot of these mass shootings. At least they weren't in the news for the past year or so. And now we've had a couple in recent, probably like I think the last week or a little over the last week. I heard there have been actually 7 of them in the past 7 days, which is troubling. There's so much gun violence in the country. And I think at some point we have to address that there's a major mental health crisis in the country. And I think the media has to take some responsibility as well because I've already seen the face of the shooter spread across the media. I don't even watch much media or much news. I specifically try to avoid it because it's so negative, and we'll get into that too in a few minutes. But it's just that I remember years ago hearing about how the FBI had said, do not put the face of these shooters and their names on television and in the news because other people who are mentally disturbed recognize that they can get famous for doing something like this. Okay? So the media has been informed of that. They know the risks of making celebrities out of these mass shooters, yet they do it anyway. And at what point are they somewhat responsible for sensationalizing this? I understand it's a real news story. It deserves to be covered, but we don't need to know who the killers are. We don't need their names and their faces spread all over the news. I remember I saw years ago, Marilyn Manson did an interview, and he was talking about Columbine and how he refused to do any interviews after the Columbine shooting because he was being blamed for it and he didn't want to contribute to what he thought was terrible behavior by the press, who gave those kids exactly what they wanted, which was they were on the cover of Time magazine. The media gave them exactly what they wanted. They wanted to be famous. And other killers probably want that too. Unfortunately, this killer survived. Alleged killer, I suppose I should say it that way. Alleged. Um, I prefer it when the shooter doesn't survive, which happens sometimes. Sometimes they commit suicide. Sometimes somebody takes them out. And then in other cases, in fact, it seems like in a lot of these cases that they do survive, and we end up hearing about them for years to come. So the media is putting this stuff out there, and it's impacting us. And my question in all this is, what are you putting in your brain? Because if you're watching the news a lot, I would imagine, I mean, it's important to be informed to some level, but I would imagine if you're watching 4, 6, 8 hours of news a day, you're pumping your head full of fear and anxiety and anger. And there was a quote I just saw this morning. There was a study done. I saw this. Clay Travis was talking about this in on his show this morning. There's a study done of media coverage across the world, specifically related to coronavirus. And the study showed that the most negative media of any country in the world on coronavirus was the United States. Shocking, I know, right? I don't think anyone in the country is going to be surprised by that. Now, COVID's a real thing, and it should be taken seriously. The point is, though, if you watch the news all the time, you're constantly being pumped full of fear. You're constantly being pumped full of negativity. I mean, think about it like this. When was the last time you turned on the news and the lead story was about something positive? Doesn't happen very often, does it? You're probably having a tough time coming up with the last time that happened because negativity sells. It does. People don't want good news. For some reason, the public seems to have a desire for negative news. If it bleeds, it leads, is an old saying in journalism. And it pumps you full of fear. There's all kinds of negativity, and then people get scared, and then we wonder why we've got a mental health crisis in this country, which is pretty clear to me that we do. There's a lot of people struggling. There's a lot of people hurting. All you have to do is kind of look around a little bit, and you can figure it out pretty easily. So, what are you putting into your brain? If you're putting too much negativity into your brain, that's going to influence the way you think. That's going to influence the way you see the world. That's going to influence the way you see yourself. It's going to influence the way you see others, and probably all in a negative way. So, I hope everyone is careful with how much news they put into their brain and is mindful of all this negativity that's out there, whether it's cable news or social media. I mean, the amount of nonsense I see on social media on a daily basis, it blows me away. It shouldn't at this point, but it does. I mean, and that takes me to another point: is that there was some research done that said a lot of people now get their news primarily from social media, which I think is fine. And something about cable news, MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, those ratings are going down. And they're going down. I hope they're going down because people are tuning out of the negativity and they realize that this stuff isn't serving them. The people that I talk to who aren't watching the news anymore or aren't watching it very often say that's the primary reason. They're tired of just constantly hearing negative stuff all the time. So maybe we're in for a change on that. I don't know. But for a long time, it's been that the negativity sells. And I think that's probably still generally true. But the social media thing that I was talking about is that a lot of people get their news from social media now, and a lot of misinformation has been on social media about coronavirus, and this is what the study showed. And that led people to believe a lot of stuff that wasn't true. Now, I don't know exactly specifically what those things are, but that's what the information was, is that there's a lot of stuff that's said on social media that's just simply false, and it's presented as fact. And a lot of times people can't tell the difference, and they start to believe this stuff that's not true and form opinions on that and make decisions based on that. Such as, for example, perhaps whether or not to get the vaccine, or whether or not to get the mask or put the mask on. Those types of things could be influenced to some extent by false information on social media. So what are you putting into your brain? It's kind of the theme of this, right? I know the title is the Colorado shooting, but it's really what are you putting in your brain? Because we hear all the time about physical diets, exercise, eat well, get enough sleep, different diet plans, different ways to reduce your carbs, reduce your sugars, that type of stuff. And all of that is good. And if you don't take care of your body, you're going to have physical problems. But if you don't put healthy stuff into your brain, you're going to have thinking problems. And that's what this channel is more about. I'm sure at some point we'll get into workout routines and what I eat and don't eat or try to avoid. I am trying to get away from sugar a lot more and reduce carbs and those types of things, which I kind of noticed recently my diet is too much carbs and sugar and not enough balance of other stuff. So those are some things that I'm personally working on. Maybe you're working on something else. But what are you putting into you? Because that's going to impact the way you think. What's in your brain? If you're around people who are negative, you're around stuff that's constantly uh, negative and unhealthy, it's going to change the way you think. You're not going to be able to live your best life if you're always around negativity. Personally, I find toxic situations are usually difficult to fix. And if I can't fix them, and the people who have the ability to fix them, say you're in a toxic work environment, for example, and these situations can get messy. But if you're in a situation where you can't fix it, or a toxic relationship, if you're in a fixed situation where you can't change it and the people who have the authority to change it won't, what do? Well, ideally, you just leave, right? But that might not always be an option. So you got to be mindful if you're in a situation where you're surrounded by negativity of what you're thinking when that goes on. People are being negative, people are being mean, people are being unreasonable. What are you thinking when that happens? How is that impacting your thoughts and your behavior and your mood? Because you have to work your way out of that if you find yourself in a lousy mood. And that can be tough to do, especially if it's not a behavior that you're used to. It might be 10 or 15 minutes before you recognize how much of an impact that person's behavior has on you. Might be longer than that. You might go hours in being in a rotten mood because of what somebody said at work or what somebody did while you were at school or whatever you're going through, wherever you are where this situation takes place. So I hope everyone is trying to be more aware of what their thinking is, because a lot of people just don't care about you. I don't think MSNBC cares about you, Fox News, CNN. I don't think these people care about you, like, at all. Okay? I think they just want to use you so they can benefit financially, because the news works the same way any other TV show works, whether it's a sitcom, a television drama, TV movie, anything else. It's based on ratings and revenue because of those ratings. So they don't really care about what's in your best interest for the most part. They care about getting you stuck to the TV, getting addicted to the news, and buying the products that are advertised, because that's how they make their money. And the truth is that there just aren't that many people who actually care about you or me individually. There just aren't, because most people are only going to serve themselves. And that's just something that we I guess we have to accept. I guess hang on to those who do care, because that's very important. But if people are being negative, people are treating you in ways that are unhealthy, and they don't care about you, you may not be able to fix that, but you can fix how you handle it. I saw a quote a couple days ago, I guess it was on Monday, that said 10% of life is what happens. The other 90% of life is how you handle it, or something like that. So life is going to happen. There's all kinds of stuff that's going to happen to us that's out of our control. But how we handle it, how we deal with it, how we work through it that is in our control. We do have the ability to work through this stuff in a better way, because most of our suffering comes from our thinking. If you break your arm, that's pain, right? But if you feel useless, if you say you're ineffective or you're useless because your arm is broken, that's suffering, because that's your thinking. And that's really what I think it comes down to. How we think will have a bigger impact on the quality of our life than anything else. So if you're putting negativity into your brain all the time, you're not going to be able to live at your best. If you're around people who are toxic and people who are negative, try to get those people out of your life. And if you can't, just be mindful and aware of you need to how well you need to be thinking to get through it. Because if you let those people drag you down in their misery or in their negativity, they will if you're not careful. So if you put junk into your body, you're going to have physical health problems. If you put junk into your brain, you're going to have mental health problems. I saw something, Scott Adams on his Coffee with Scott Adams, his YouTube channel. I was just watching it today, and he's been talking about this for a couple of days, is that if you watch the news from one side only, specifically, whether it's Democrat or Republican, you can develop brain damage. And he was talking about a study about that today in the last couple of days. And I wonder how far it goes. I wonder if you just consume a lot of news, if you can lead to you developing anxiety disorders or depression disorders, those types of things. I would imagine that that's possible. So that's why I don't watch much of the news. I got caught up in it a little bit too much yesterday, and I could feel my brain and my body just being really intolerant of it. So much so that I ended up taking a nap for a couple hours, and this video was supposed to be made yesterday, and that's why it's a day late. I got caught up in other stuff. So it can happen. I mean, I'm here talking about how to get through it, and even I can get caught up in this stuff. So it's easy to do. Life is imperfect, the media is imperfect, the culture is imperfect, people are imperfect. You just do the best you can. All right. I don't know if that helped anybody. If it did, hit the like button. Looks like somebody already has. And hit the subscribe button, as I said. I thank you all so much for tuning in here on March 24th, whether it's 2021 during the live feed or whether it's 10 years from now or however long this thing ends up being on. Thank you for your support of Black Belt Zen. Hope you got some value out of this and it opened your eyes a little bit. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will talk to you again soon. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.